record on. Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Thanks for giving up some of your Monday evening to join us to talk about Microsoft Excel. I can think of no better way to spend your beautiful Monday evening in the fall. So thank you for being here. I hope this is enlightening and provides you with what you need to use Excel for your work or for your home or for whatever it is that you need to use it for. We're going to have 2 sessions today and Wednesday, and we'll kind of cover what as we get into this, we'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to cover in each session. I want to introduce myself a little bit more fully before we get started. So my name's Adam. I'm with the Montana Nonprofit Association. So I do training and consulting for our nonprofit members across the state of Montana. So many of those are in Eastern Montana, many of those are in Western Montana, and I train and consult for all of them. A lot of that consulting is on how to set up your financial system, how to budget, how to use your internal operations, which a lot of that requires work with Microsoft Excel. So I use Excel a lot. And frankly, I've never taken a class like this on how to use Excel. It's all self-taught. And I give that to you to say that, I think we're going to go through some basics and some techniques on how to use Excel and kind of walk through what's in there. But for you to become as proficient and as effective as you want to be, you've got to get in and make some mistakes. So I encourage you to use the exercise file that we have here as just a sandbox. Go in and get your hands dirty and make some mistakes and figure things out and sort of figure out why this didn't work and piece it all together. And that's how you really become fluent and proficient at using Excel in the way that you would like. So we're going to do what we can to cover a lot of areas over the next 2 courses, but nothing beats practice, nothing beats experience. So our structure for today, we're going to, today, I also know that with Microsoft Excel, we're all in very different places on the spectrum of our comfort level, what we know, what we don't know, and what we use it for and what we want to accomplish with Excel. So I'm training to a very broad audience, and I get that. To kind of make sure that everyone has their needs met, we're going to start at the basics. We're going to start with Excel 101. What does it mean to use a Microsoft Excel tool or spreadsheet? And we're going to move pretty quickly through formatting, through structure, through the ins and outs and the architecture of what Excel looks like, into some formulas and some functions. And then by the end of our session on Wednesday, we're going to be using charts and graphs and these really cool things called pivot tables. So it may, for some of you, if you're back at 101, meaning I don't know how to really use Excel, it may feel like we're moving pretty fast. I encourage you to use the chat. I have it open here on my screen so I can see it. If you're feeling lost, if you didn't catch the click that I just did on the tool, please stop me. Please say, can you go do that again? What was that? Or whatever it might be. And we'll make sure that you are kept up to speed. For some of you, you may be a little more advanced. You're just waiting for that pivot table conversation. Some of this may feel a little rote and a little bit, it's not meeting the needs that you have. I encourage you throughout this to take what you can, and also if there are specific use cases to ask those questions as well for something I can be helpful with. Our structure for this class is to go over these areas that we have up here on the screen. I would encourage you also, when we're done with this, session between Monday and Wednesday, if you have a particular use case of saying, I want Excel to do this thing, or I have this problem and I think Excel can solve it. How do I do this? Or you mentioned this and I want to know more about it. Send an email to Dara. Sorry, Dara, I'm volunteering you. In the interim between this session and Wednesday, and we'll spend the first few minutes on Wednesday just going through those questions and answering those, and I'll sort of take those on the fly and we'll see if I can't get those answered, and then we'll move into our content for Wednesday. So whatever comes up between now and Wednesday that you want to know how to do, send an email to Dara saying, I want him to cover this, and we'll make sure we can do it to the best of our abilities before we conclude the session. We're here for about 90 minutes today, so we're here till about 7:30. I have a little bit of extra time, so I can hang on afterwards if you want to ask questions as well. And the same goes for Wednesday too. So this is your space. We want to make sure that this is successful for you, and you get out of this what you need for you, again, your business, your work, or your home life, whatever it is that you need. Again, just some housekeeping. Excel means, means a lot of different things. We're going to be working in the Microsoft Excel version called 365, which is the latest version. And I use a Mac, which may look a little bit different than it might look on your PC. Also, there are different versions of Excel that you may have bought and downloaded or subscribed to over the years, all the way back to 2007 and prior. Also, Google has their own product that's meant to mimic Excel called Google Sheets. Apple has their own product that's meant to mimic Excel called Numbers. I give you all that to say, as you're looking at my screen, as you're looking at the exercise file on your screen and looking at my screen, and I'm going through, click this and move that there and right click here and etc. It may not look exactly the same. The functionality is the same. You can do all the same things, but some things may be in little different places. So I give you that, say, don't get frustrated or say, mine doesn't do that. I promise it does. It may just be in a little bit of a different spot. So if you get stuck in that, if you're watching me do work and you're trying to do the same thing on your other screen and you're not finding the buttons, please stop me and say, I'm not finding that. Where might I find it? And we can make sure that you have that. I use Excel on a Mac. I don't use Numbers. I don't like Numbers, but it's meant to look like Excel. I use Microsoft Excel on a Macintosh computer. It does all the exact same things that it would on a PC, but some of the buttons may look a little bit different. 99% of this is going to be exactly the same, but just that 1% I know can throw people off sometimes. And I don't want that to be a burden to learning what you need to learn. So with that, I want to make sure for those of you that have a second screen or have one screen and want to sort of minimize me or my screen and just do the work on one screen. If you want to have that exercise file open so that you are doing the exact same things that I'm doing at the exact same time, feel free to do that now. Dara has put that in the chat. It was also emailed to you this morning. So you should have that. The way this is going to work is that exercise file right now is a very incomplete document. We're going to be doing the formulas right here in real time for the next 90 minutes. And again on Wednesday. And then after Wednesday's class, I'm going to send that completed exercise file that we completed here in real time to Dara to send out to you. So you will have at the end of this a pre-file and then a post file. And that becomes your sandbox. And you can say, okay, I have the formulas. I know how this is supposed to look. Why can't I make mine do that? And you can make those mistakes from the pre-file and compare it to the final document and go back and watch this recording if you're not seeing what you need to see. So that's the way this is going to function. We're going to work on that in that exercise file, and that's going to be our class is just going through show and tell of how to use Microsoft Excel. So with that, I'm going to switch screens. Are there any other housekeeping needs that I need to address before we get started? Everyone seems like they can hear and see as best as they're able. Does anyone need access to the exercise file and doesn't have it right now?
I do, please.
I need it also. Thank you.
Okay. If you open up the chat in Zoom, it should be at the bottom of your screen there. There's a little call out that says chat, and it's attached there. You should see an exercise file that you can double click on to download. It's probably going to be the fastest way to give it to you right now. All right. Perfect. Again, I have the chat open here on one of my screens so I can see questions as they come in. Dara, if I'm missing a question, you feel free to stop me. We can go from there. Right now, you should be seeing an Excel file that says agenda, session 1 agenda, session 2 agenda. It's got the Eastern Plains logo on there. Is it readable for everyone? Do we need to make the screen larger for everyone, or is it legible at this point? If you need to make it larger, please feel free to put that in the chat. We'll go from there. This is our agenda for today. We're going to talk about structure of Excel workbooks, how they work, where things are, just sort of the general architecture of Excel. We're going to talk about formatting and organizing data. We're going to talk about working with cell references as sort of a precursor to using functions. We're going to talk about using data to sort and filter. working with lists. We've got a big master list that we're going to walk through and show how to make it a little bit more usable for you as a user to sort, find, replace, freeze panes, etc. Some of these things. And then we're going to get into an area where we're going to spend quite a bit of time, which is on functions, which is the equals something, the formulas that actually you get Excel doing some work for you in the background. Before we get into that, or as we get into that, we're going to talk about this first agenda item, which is just a structure of an Excel workbook. So they all look like this, which the bulk of what we work in is this little grid system right here in the main portion of the screen. Above that, you have a number of titles here on this toolbar: home, insert, draw, etc. And you'll notice that beneath that, there's a number of different formatting options, a number of different commands is what they're called. Everything that you need to do in Excel can be found in somewhere in this toolbar. Now I notice if I click it once, it goes away. I tell you that because sometimes people open this and they click it and it goes away and they say, where to go? So if I click it again, it's going to come back and I'm able to see this. On your home tab, you have a lot of the very basic commands of how to format text, which we'll get to. You can bold and underline and change font size, change alignment within the cell, change the cell format. So right now this is general, but I can make it currency, or I can make it a date or a percentage, etc. I have the ability to do some conditional formatting, which we're not going to talk about here today. To insert new rows and columns. So a lot of the kind of basic core functionality of Excel is right here on this home tab. This next one over is for insert. If I want to insert something new, insert a new functionality or a new piece of information, this is where you're going to get into pivot tables, which we're going to talk about on Wednesday. To insert and edit a pivot table is going to be here. Same thing with visualizations, with charts and graphs, with pie charts and line graphs and all that fun stuff is found here, over here on the insert tab. Also, you can insert pictures, shapes, text boxes, which overlay the cells. So this is how I inserted the Eastern Plains logo onto this right here. I went into insert picture and found the file and put it down here, just like I would in a Word doc or something like that. Some of you may have draw, which gives me the ability literally to draw over top of this. Some of you may not, depending on the version of Excel that you have. Page layout is all about how this shows up if I save it as a PDF or if I print it. So this is where I can just kind of like in Word, if I want to set the margins so that it prints with narrower margins, prints closer to the edge, either top, bottom, or side, I can do that there. If I wanted to print either hot dog or hamburger, portrait or landscape, I can change that here. If I want to change the size of paper that I'm going to print on from letter to tabloid or legal size, I can do that there. Print areas. One thing that people get hung up on is they have this really long list or really long spreadsheet, and they go to print it and it prints like 4 columns per page and goes, it becomes this really mess of a printed document. People struggle with printing Excel. One thing that's really easy to do to fix that is this width and height setting right here. So if I want to make sure that my spreadsheet prints where it goes for the entire width of the data just on one page, so I don't end up with 4 pages worth of columns, I can set this width to say 1 page. So now it's going to shrink this document down so that it all fits on 1 page widthwise, and then lengthwise it may be 10 pages long, but it's going to get everything on the width. So I can do the same thing for height. If I want to squeeze everything into a 1 by 1 page, 1 piece of paper, I can set it to 1 by 1. Regardless of how much data is on there, it's going to automatically shrink that data down so it fits down into 1 piece of paper. It may be tiny, you may be able to read it, but it's going to put that there. So page layout is all about printing or saving as a PDF, so it's no longer in this usable interactive format. It becomes static. How do I want that to look? Formulas, we're going to talk a lot about this towards the end of this class and in the next class. This is where you can do all the fun stuff with Excel on, there are hundreds of formulas and I don't know many of them. Most people don't know many of them because there's just so many, but they're all tucked right in here. We're going to get to that. Data, we're going to get to this again. These are some of the more advanced ones. Review is if I wanted to review this and add a comment. or do a spell check, just like in Word, or a thesaurus check if I wanted to get a better word than some of these that I have here. Those are there. View, we're going to get to that pretty quick, but this is how I can freeze different panes or zoom in and out, etc. And then developer, some of you may have that, most of you probably won't. So this is the toolbar, the toolbar at the top. Beneath that, then you have this formula box right here, function box. This is an important one. We're going to move into this a little bit more, but this is going to show, regardless of, once I get down into this grid system right here, whatever's showing in that cell is going to show up here in this formula box right here. My formula bar, I should say, this formula bar. Oftentimes, it's just whatever I've typed in there. So right here, you can see that I typed in session 1 agenda, and session 1 agenda is what shows up here. This, though, is where you can start to see the back end of what's happening if I put in a formula. So let's just say I want to create a formula. I want to know what 2 plus 2 equals. So I say equals 2 plus 2. Now this cell shows 4. But up here in the formula bar, it shows what I typed in, which was equals 2 plus 2. So this is where you can start to see sort of behind the veil, see behind what the result of your formulas, and see what's going on with that formula. We're going to spend quite a bit of time with this, but this is where that shows up. So again, it may just show what you've typed in, the actual text right here, or it may show the algorithm, the formula that's happening beneath the result, which was, in this case, equals 2 plus 2. The result of that is 4. Then you're into the actual spreadsheet itself. This that we're looking at is called a worksheet. Every individual file within Excel is called a workbook. The difference between a workbook and a worksheet is that a workbook has multiple sheets. And you can see that right here. You can see at the bottom, I have multiple sheets of this workbook, and I have data and formulas on each of them, and I've named them different things. Each of these is called a worksheet. Combined, they're called a workbook. I can add as many worksheets to this workbook as I would like. I can click this plus sign right here, and then you see I have a new one called sheet 1. I do that again, I've got another one called sheet 2. I can have as many worksheets as my computer can. I can make this file as large as I want to. My only limiting factor is how much space does my computer have. I can literally go on forever and ever. I can have one worksheet for every day. If I wanted to have my grocery list for every day, I can have one of those for every day of the year. I can have whatever it is. I've got a limited number of worksheets that I can add to this. And then I can right click and delete these if I want them to go away, which I do. I can also come down here and just double click on this name. So right now I name this worksheet agenda. If I double click on it, I can change that. See, I can retype that right here. So this is how I can keep myself organized, just so I can know at a glance what each worksheet has on it by naming those tabs. So I don't have to go and find that every time I want to go to a different tab. I can just name them something I know. And I can also right click here and change the color. So maybe I want this tab to be red because it's the agenda and I want you to be able to see it easier. So now you can see that the agenda tab is red versus the rest of these, which are just gray. So this is for those of you that are super organized and have binders full of information that have a nice, pretty colored system of tabs. This is the equivalent of that, where you can flip through your tabs, you can flip through your worksheets, and you can find the information you need to find, name it what you need to name it. I can move these as well. If I want the agenda to be at the end, I just click on it and hold and move it all the way over here. And it moved over there. Let's go one more if I can. I'll move you in. There we go. Now my agenda is at the very end. Move it back to the front. It's there. So I can reorder my tabs, my worksheets, which cumulatively create the workbook. Each of these worksheets, if I were to create a new one, you notice that it's just blank. And what it has on it is it has this grid system right here. You'll notice that each of these columns, which are vertical, are named with are alphanumeric. So from A to Z, and then they start at AA, and then they go to BA and et cetera, you can have hundreds of columns moving left to right. Going down, you have rows, starting with one all the way down to, I can go down to over 1 million rows per worksheet. Each of these cells then has a unique name, which is the row plus column. So right now I'm in cell C3, cell C3, column 3, row 3, cell C3. It's important to know that naming system, to know that grid system, as we're making formulas which take information from somewhere on a spreadsheet and two other places in the spreadsheet and combine them into something that's something different. To know that grid system, know how it works, and to be able to know what that formula is referencing is very important. So this is a key function of Excel, is knowing this grid system. Columns, alphanumeric, A all the way through a lot, row all the way from 1 down to over 1 million, and then each of those creates a unique cell, A1, B2, C3, etc. This tab that I made. Back to this right here. Okay, so that's getting us into our working with our cell references, which is that grid system. So you can see is if I click on any of these cells, I get the location of that cell right up here in the corner, right by our formula bar. It says E3. I'm in E3. I can click over here. I'm in I2. That's how this works. Okay. As we use Excel, as you get more comfortable in this, and some of you may be familiar with shortcut keys from working in other systems, other softwares. I want to give you a few of those now. It will make your life a little bit easier as you start using this more often. A shortcut key is instead of me having to find that command up in the top toolbar, or me having to right click and find it that way, I can just use 2 keystrokes on my keyboard to do the exact same thing. So if I wanted to cut a cell, cut the contents of a cell, meaning I cut it out of the grid, then I can move it somewhere else and paste it in somewhere else. I can click Control, I can hold Control and X for cut. So if I hold Control X, notice that that cell now has little blinky lines around it that are moving. That tells me that the computer has cut that cell. And then I can come over here to C2 and I can do paste, which is Control V, and now the contents of that cell just moved over 2. Cut it and move it back. Control C is if I wanted to copy it and paste an identical copy, an identical clone of that cell into another cell. So instead of cutting it and moving it, I'm just going to make it a second copy and move that. That's Control C. So I'm going to go Control C, go over to C3, Control V to paste it. There it is. Here's my paste, which is Control V. And all these, if you notice on the keyboard, all these are right next to each other. X, C, and V are right next to each other. If you use no shortcuts with these 3, you'll save yourself a ton of time. Cutting, copying, and pasting is what takes, and it's pretty quick to do otherwise. I mean, I've got my cut, copy, and paste right here. But if I'm highlighting multiple rows, multiple columns, doing this often, it's pretty quick to just cut, paste, copy, paste, away we go. So Control X, Control V, Control C, Control V are important. If I wanted to undo anything, I can go up here to this little back arrow, which undoes the last thing I did. I can also do Control Z, which is right next to Control X, and I can undo. So I can go all the way back to, there we go, back to my cut. You can undo as many steps as you have done in Excel until you get to the point where you sort of deviate from that linear path. So if I undo 20 times and then I redo something else, I can't continue to go back, 20 more steps. I'm done at that point. But, so if you get into a document and you make a bunch of changes and you go, oh, shoot, I forgot to do this thing. I'm supposed to do that first. I can go Control Z all the way back to the beginning, as long as I don't stop midway through and do something new. Then I'm not going to go back any further. I'm going to go back to where I kind of broke that chain of actions. Redo moves me forward, and it's the exact same thing. If I go 20 steps back, I can click Control Y and move 20 steps forward. There, I just redid all that. I can move 20 steps forward until I get to the point that I stop and do a new action. Then I can't do that any further. So Control Z and Control Y allow me to move back and forward in the actions that I've done. Again, this is where Excel is a sandbox. Use it as a sandbox. Feel free to make mistakes. If it doesn't work, Control Z, undo, try it again. I didn't like what I did there, so I'm going to go all the way back to this. So I've got a clean document. There we go. Some formatting, some quick formatting that may be helpful. I can go Control B to bold. Control B will bold that. Control I will make it italics. Control U will underline, etc. Some navigation options that's really helpful, especially when you're using big spreadsheets, big bits of data, is to be able to move to the last filled column and the last filled row. So if I've got, I'm just going to show you this as an example. This is the worksheet we're going to be working off of. This is a master list of 11,000 nonprofits in the state of Montana. It's a very large list. I could hold the down arrow and just sit here and move cell by cell, row by row down 11,000 rows. Or I can start at the top and I can click Control down, and it's going to move me from the top all the way down to the bottom row of data. It's going to go to as far as data exists, it's going to stop there. I can go Control up arrow, it's going to move me back to the top. If I go Control right, it's going to move me as far to the right as there is data. And if I go from that point, Control down, it's going to move me down to the very bottom of where I have data. So this is a fast way to navigate, a fast way to move, especially if I wanted to highlight. For example, the next shortcut here is if I wanted to highlight this entire thing. Let's say I wanted to highlight all, 28 columns and all 11,000 rows. I can hold Shift, Control, right, and it's going to highlight the row all the way. It's going to highlight the columns all the way to the end column of data. And then I can hold Shift, Control, down, and it's going to go to the very bottom of that table. So it's going to highlight all of the data in my columns and my rows by holding Shift, Control, right, Shift, Control, down. Now I've highlighted this whole thing. From here, I can go Control C and I can copy the entire thing. 11,000 rows and 26 columns worth of data copied right there with just a couple quick strokes. Instead of me, sorry about that. Instead of me having to go from A1 and arrow all the way over and then arrow all the way down for 11,000 rows, you can see how that would take a long time. So using that shortcut of Shift, Control, right, Shift, Control, down, or if I just wanted to do a column, I could just go to column H and go Shift, Control, down. It's going to go to the bottom. It's a great shortcut. And it's there for you if you wanted to, it's here in this document, which you have now, so you can just play with that and get that to work for you. You can also use, if you wanted to move a little bit faster through a spreadsheet, you can use your page up and page down on your keyboard. So again, I can arrow down, I can do that all day long, and it's going to move pretty slow. It's not going to go any faster than this. If I hit page down, watch the rows right here. So right now we're in row 1. If I hit the page down key, I go to 53, which was the next row that wasn't visible before. And again, down to 105, etc. So I can move a little bit faster up and down when I have a big piece of data like this, just by using page up, page down. So these are just some navigational tools that will help. Oftentimes what people get hung up on is Excel is just how long things take to do, and to do all the keystrokes and do all the formulas and highlight the right things and cut the right things, etc. This might save you some of that time. So those are some shortcut keys. They're here. Mess with it. Play with it. All right. Do we have everybody so far? Lose anybody with our shortcut keys or just the general architecture of an Excel spreadsheet and Excel workbook? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the shortcut keys on my sample say Shift Alt right and Shift Alt down instead of Shift Control?
Yes,
So what is,
sorry, I get hung up on, sometimes there's a difference between Word and Mac, and I sort between a PC and a Mac.
okay,
Try Shift Control right. If that doesn't work, try try Shift Alt right. It's
Okay,
it's one or the other. I think it's Shift Alt.
Shift Control right did what you said it would, but
Okay.
Shift Alt right, does that, it seemed to do something different?
Okay, then you're right. That's a mistake on my part, and I am correcting it. And for the completed document you have, you'll have it Shift Control. I said Shift Control. I thought Shift Control, but I typed Alt. So Shift Control right is going to highlight all the way to the right, and then Shift Control down is going to highlight all the way to the bottom of the data set that you have.
Does Shift Alt do anything in particular?
Certainly does.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Thank you for that. All right, so we're going to spend some time formatting and looking at this master list. So again, I told you this is a list that I use quite a bit in my work. This is a list of every tax exempt nonprofit organization in the state of Montana. We get it from the IRS and it's updated public knowledge, but it has a lot of data about the name of every organization, their address, where they're located, their income, et cetera. There's a lot of good data here. When I look at this, I don't see much of that, right? So this is a useful list, but right now it's not very useful to me. So we're going to do some formulas later to analyze the data, but right now I just want to get it so it looks better and that is more functional from that perspective. And you'll notice that I've got, if I click in this, so I'm going to click in this first one right here, E2. You notice that the city, I'm in the city column. It says great. That's all I can see. But up here it says Great Falls. So I know that there's data there that I'm not seeing because my columns are so narrow. So I'm not seeing all the data there. I can change the width of my columns and the height of my rows right up here. So you notice my cursor right now is a white cross, which is kind of the default. If I get up here, you'll notice that it's shifted now. If it's a down arrow and I click on it, I'm going to highlight that entire column. But when I get close to the line between the columns, you'll notice that it's a line one way or the other and a line and a vertical line. If I click and hold, now I can expand the width of this column to make it wider, right? And now I can see it says Great Falls. All right, that makes sense. I can see it all, and so on and so forth down the line. I can do that for each of these columns, for my street address, for my name, for this EIN number, for all these. I can make these wider, but I still, I've got 11,000 rows here, and I don't know what the longest name is. I don't know how wide I need to make this so that I can see at a glance all of the information, because I'm still getting this cut off, right? I'm still not seeing this one right here, which is this super long name to language society. I'm not seeing the last word in that. And it's kind of a pain in the butt to have to figure out, well, what's the width that I want for each of these columns so that I can see everything that's in those columns without having to look at the formula bar. There's a quick fix for that. If I come up here to this top corner, this little caret in the corner, and click it, it highlights the entire worksheet. The entire thing is highlighted. Now, if I come between any of these columns and just double click, it auto sizes those columns to fit the widest cell length in that column. So auto sizes everything. So now I know that there's nothing longer than this width within the name. And this EIN number is going to be they're all the same width or same length of number. They're all 10 digits or something. So I know that they all fit. So they all auto sizes all my columns to fit the data for all 11,000 plus columns that I have. And I can do the same thing for rows. That right now it's all fitting on one row, so I don't have to worry about having multiple rows. So that's a quick fix. Now all of a sudden, this spreadsheet looks a whole lot different, doesn't it? I can see a lot more at a glance without having to go into that formula bar and say, what's that say? I have a lot more information at my fingertips now to be able to just sort of scan this and see some things. Now, again, it's wider. I'm going to undo that just so we can see that again. It's wider now than it was before, meaning I need to do some more scrolling to be able to get all the way to the end, but that's okay. It's still more visually appealing for me, for sure. Next thing I want to do is I want to format my header row up here so that I can see these a little bit easier. So I'm going to highlight this entire row right here. I'm just going to highlight, I'm going to use the little arrow, the left arrow, the right arrow on row 1, which highlights the entire thing. And I'm going to do Control B, bolded, Control U, it's underlined. Now I can see that I've got a header row right there that looks a little bit different than the rest of them. My titles, look, they stand out a little bit more. I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. So I'm going to come up here to this formatting text area. I'm going to use this large A, which increases my font size. Also notice when I sit on this command and just don't move my mouse, it gives me a prompt of what that is. So I don't know what it is at a glance. I can just kind of go over it and sit there and it's going to say, oh, it's for orientation. Oh, it's to decrease the font size. So this one increases the font size. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make it a size 16 just so it's a little bit bigger. And notice now that I'm not getting all of the text. So I'm going to go up here and resize again, highlight everything, double click. There we go, resize, so now I can see everything at a glance. Cool trick right there. That helps a lot, so I can see this list a lot easier. Next thing though, as I start scrolling down, what happened to my title row? It went away. It's gone, right? Because I'm scrolling down. I'm no longer on row 1. I'm now on row 192. And as I get over here into some of these numbers, like I don't remember what this 4 was or what this 1 was or what 201712 means because I lost my title row. I don't know what that's referring to. So I want to make sure that as I scroll down, I can see those titles even as I move down. To do that, I'm going to go to this view tab. Go to the view tab, and there's these options over here called freeze panes. I have some options. I can freeze the top row. Let's do that for a second. So if I click freeze the top row, now as I scroll down, look, my top row stays frozen at the top. So over here, you can see that I'm on row 83, but right above it is row 1, which is my title row. So now I can scroll down and I can see all this information at a glance. And I can know that, J, so this 9 is my affiliation code. This is an IRS code. And this I is my subsection code. And I can see all that information, even regardless of how far I scroll down, I know what column I'm in. I know what the title that is. I can also freeze the first column. I can do both of those at the same time. Oops, sorry, no, I can do one of those at a time. With either using the top row and the first column. I can do one of those at a time. So now as I scroll to the right, I get to keep that EIN number at the far left. So I know what that's referencing regardless of which row I'm in. I can see that. But that's a little bit limited for a few reasons. Number one, I lost my title row on the top and I wanted to keep that. And number two, I don't really care about this EIN number. What I really care about is the name of the organization. This means nothing to me. The name of the organization means something to me. So what I want to do is I want to unfreeze my panes, unfreeze, get back to level 1, level best. Now I've got nothing frozen. As I scroll, you can see everything moves. And I want to go to the row beneath the one that I want to freeze and the column to the right of the one that I want to freeze. And now I'm going to click, instead of clicking freeze top row or click freeze column, I want to click freeze panes, multiple panes. Now, look at that. Now I've got my name frozen. And as I scroll down, my title frozen. And I can see all this at a glance. So I can see just at a glance, I can see what the asset amount of the Al Maggot Rugby Club is, wherever that is. I can see that at a glance right there, just by able to scroll down, because I've frozen multiple panes by going to the right beneath the row I wanted to freeze and right to the right of the column I wanted to freeze. And I can do that for any of these. So let's say that I wanted to freeze the first 20 rows and the first 20 rows, so go to 21, and the first however many columns. I can go here, I can freeze there. And now it's all frozen from that point. So you can freeze from any point. It freezes from that cell, it freezes everything above, everything to the left. So be careful with it in that regard, but it's very helpful. Also, this EIN number means nothing to me. Some people keep track of that. Again, I just want the name, and I don't want to muddy up my frozen panes by having it there. So I can delete it, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to delete anything out of here. I just want it gone. I want it to be hidden. If I right click, I have an option to hide. So I can hide that column. It's still there. You'll notice that my columns start with B now and they go all the way to the end. It doesn't start with A. Column A is still there. It's just hidden. I can't see it anymore. So now once I freeze my panes from here, I've got a little bit more space. I can go a little bit further before I lose sight of what's on the far right end. But column A is still there. I can come to any of these columns. Let's say that I don't care about these codes at all. I can highlight all of them. I can right click and I can hide them. And now they're gone. Notice it goes from G to L. All the letters in between are still there, but they're just hidden. And I can scroll and go past them. They're meaningless to me for what I need at the moment. So maybe if you're presenting something to a board of directors or to a client or to your boss or whoever it might be, and you want to focus them in on certain information, but you want them to ignore something else, you can hide that information that they don't need to care about or that you don't care about. And you can focus your attention on only that which is important. It doesn't go anywhere. It's still there. So I don't have to worry about deleting or saving an extra copy or anything. I can just highlight between the columns that are hidden, right click and unhide, and they're back. But it allows me to see at a glance what I need to see a little bit more easily. I'm going to unhide everything. I'm going to get my EIN number back, even though I don't care about it. And I'm able to sort and I'm able to move and scroll and see information at a glance. So that's navigating a big list like this. That's a little bit of information there. Something else that's helpful when we have a big list like this and we want to start to make it talk, do some analysis, tell us its secrets, get some better summary information out of it. We want to be able to sort this or filter this or list this in certain ways. Up here, again, on my home tab, which is kind of my home base. This is where I get a lot of good information. Over here on the right side, I have these options for sort and filter. Now, I can click on any of these columns. So let's just say, let's go to city. And I want to say sort A to Z. So I've clicked into the city cell, E1, sorry. And I'm going to click sort A to Z. It's just automatically going to sort by the city name from A to Z. Or I could do from Z to A. There we go. Now I've got it from Z to A. Go back to A to Z. I can also do a custom sort where I want to do levels of sorting. So if I click that, I get a prompt. I get a box that pops up that says, all right, tell me what you want to sort by. Tell me what you're looking at. So, and if I click on, so my first option is right here. This is my first level of sort. And I've got all my different headers right here as options. So Excel is saying, which column would you like to sort by? You want to sort by city, by state, by zip code, whatever it might be. I'm going to sort by city first. But then let's say, I've got a second level of sort here. And I'm going to do from A to Z. That sounds good. I want to do another level of sort here to make it, a little more information for me. So I'm going to use this plus sign. And then it says sort by city first, then by what? Then I want to do by name, again from A to Z. And click OK. I think it probably already done that for me, actually. So now I have all my absorbees at the top. And then from A to V here for my name column. So multiple levels of sort. You can have as many levels as you need to. You can sort every single column if you needed to. You can also do some sorting by formatting. So let's say that as I was reviewing this list, there were two rows that stood out to me. The Absorki Community Services and Absorki Evangelical Church. They stood out to me and I wanted to highlight those, call those out. I'm going to highlight that entire row right here. And I'm going to go up here to my formatting, this little paint box with the yellow beneath it. And I'm going to highlight these. So now they're highlighted because I wanted to call them out. Now, when I sort, I want to do a custom sort. I'll go back to city. I'm going to do a custom sort. And I'm going to do by city first. But then instead of sorting by a name again, second, but instead of by values, I want to sort by cell color. And I want yellow on top. So I want anything that's highlighted yellow. So go by city first. So my Zork is going to be at the top. And then anything that's highlighted yellow above everything else. Let's click OK. There we go. So now I have Absorki Community Services and Evangelical Church at the top, and then all the others beneath it in alphanumeric order, alphabetical order. So I can do multiple levels of sort depending on what I wanted to highlight. If I want to bring something to the top, I can highlight that, or use some other, make it change the cell color. I change the font color. Maybe I want to make it red, and I can have that show up on the top as well. Let's get back and see what that looks like. Custom sort. I can say, so I can sort by cell color, by font color, or by cell icon, which we're not going to get into icons, but just by cell color and font color. If I wanted to make sure that that showed up first, showed up at the top, make that a different font color or highlight that cell a different color. All right, I'm going to get rid of this highlight. No fill, go away. There are a couple other options that we can use to sort and filter, which are a little bit more dynamic than having to get into that prompt every time. And it's to turn on this little filter button right here. This is an hourglass, like a filter. And I'm going to turn that on. So I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to click it. I turn it off, turn it on, and turn it off. So turn it back on again. What changed? You'll notice now that each of my columns now has this little drop down next to it. I turned on filter for each of my cells, each of my columns in vertical rows. From here, I'm able to do the exact same thing with sorting and filtering, or with sorting. And I have the option of what's called filtering, which is showing only certain information within this spreadsheet. So again, let's click on this drop down for city. I can sort from A to Z. I can sort from Z to A. I can just show certain cell colors or font colors if I want. Or now I have this other option down here of filtering. So I have listed with one listing for each city that shows up in this list of 11,000 names. They all show up here once from A to Z. And they're all checked right now because they're all showing. If I uncheck this and let's say I just want to show the nonprofits in Antelope, Montana, way up in northeastern Montana. There's one, first of all, and it's the Antelope Cemetery Association. That shows me just nonprofits in Antelope because that's the only thing checked. Now I can come here and say, actually, let's add in Alzada, and let's add in, let's see, let's keep going. Add in Broadus and Brockton. So now all that information is still there. All the data is still there behind the veil, behind the curtain. I'm just seeing now what I'm filtering. So you can see over here on the right, look at my rows. I go from row 1 to 53 to 138 to 2083, et cetera, all the way down. They're all still there. They're just not showing. So this is a great way if you're building formulas off this data, but you also want to be able to sort of sort and just look at pieces of it without having to scan through the whole thing. You can use these filter options to do so. And from here, I can do multiple levels of filtering. So I can say, okay, from here, I've got a certain number, a certain bit of information, and I just want to see those that have income that's not equal to 0, that have some kind of positive income for the organization. So it's a smaller list. I've got multiple levels of a filter now, and I'm narrowing down on the information that I want to show. So you could think if you've got a client list, if you've got a grocery list, if you've got financial statements, if you've got something that shows distinct columns of information, and you want to be able to sort that in multiple and filter in multiple different levels to hone in on a subset of that data, this is a great way to do it. Also, that if you want to start to get some analysis off of this, if I go and highlight this income amount column, or any of these columns really, but I'm gonna use income as our example. You'll notice down here at the bottom, I start to get some just basic calculations. Excel does this for you as a default. It says, okay, you highlighted that entire, you highlighted column Y. I'm counting eight cells that have information in them. The sum of those cells is this 1,110,000, whatever. The average of those 8 cells is 15,000 and change, etc. So I'm getting some information just without having to do any formulas at all. I'm starting to get that telling me something. I can come over here to, I can highlight city and I could say, okay, we've distilled this down to 12 records. Out of these 12 records, they have incomes of X without having to do any formulas at all, just by saying, okay, I want to highlight this number of these cities, this income. What does that tell me? I can also, I'm going to remove some of these so I can get a bigger list here. So to unfilter, you need to find the filter you have turned on, which notice that this has that little hourglass next to the down arrow. That's telling me that there's a filter on in this column. I can come here and I can select all of them again, turn on the check boxes for all. And I can come over here and let's broaden this a little bit. Let's turn it all back on again. Okay, it's there. I can also use this filter if I don't, so name is a little bit less clean than city because there's 11,000 different names versus, maybe 150 cities. Each of these names is unique, but I want to start to have this tell me something. So let's say I want this to show all of the churches. So I'm just going to start by typing church. And you can see it's doing that work already. You can see that my rows change. And I'm starting to get the results just that have the letters church in their name. Now, if I click out of this, now I'm just showing churches in Montana. So out of those 11,000 plus records that we have in this list, if I highlight this, I can see 646 of them have the name church or have the letters church, the word church in their name. Again, that's quick analysis, but it's done without having to do any formulas at all. Just by using this filter option. And I can turn that off by just clicking select all, and away we go. Now I'm back to having 11,132 records again. So that's how we can filter large data sets, sort large data sets, and start to get some analysis without having to do much work behind the scenes. Tomorrow, when we get into pivot tables, we're going to show how to use those to really get data out of this quickly and cleanly. But that's kind of a quick way. I can do this and I can turn it off and turn it on and change filters just to show what I wanted to see. Questions around, this is kind of the formatting and manipulation navigation section of our presentation for tonight. Any questions about that? All right. Go back to our agenda for a second. So we talked about structure, we talked about organizing data, working with, we're going to get to cell references in a second. So I'm going to turn these red just so I know that we've talked about them. We've got our master list example here. Now we're going to talk about formulas a little bit. So we're going to start to wade into that by talking about functions and formulas. So this tab just has some information for you to keep in the back of your head as we're building functions, building formulas. Number one, I've got this arrow pointed to our formula bar, and actually it's pointed at this little FX button right here, which is to insert a function. So a function is, it's a preloaded algorithm behind the scenes built into Excel that does certain work. You put in the arguments, you put in the data or the references that it tells you to put in, and then it gives you an answer. So they're pre-built in. A good example, which we'll do, so I could say equal, and you start a function by typing in equals. That's how you start any function in Excel. There are hundreds of functions in Excel. And I don't know many of them. There are some for engineering, there are some for finance, there are some for high level math and statistical analysis. There are some for manipulating text. So it runs the gambit. You start all of them by typing in equals. As soon as I type in equals, that tells Excel you're looking for a function, looking for a formula. There are some different ways to do that though. So I could say, like we did before, equals 2 plus 2. That's a quick function. That's what we learned in kindergarten, right? That equals 4. So you can see that I have the result of the algorithm is 4. The bones of the algorithm, the function, the equation is up here in my formula bar, equals 2 plus 2. Another way to do adding is to use the sum formula. So I can say equals sum. Actually, to do that, I need a cell reference. So I'm going to do, this is a 2, this is a 2. So I can say equals the sum of this and this. That equals 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So what I said was, this is the pre-built Excel formula for adding. It's called sum. So give me the sum of cell C19 and D19, which are these right here. 2 plus 2 equals 4. I could also say equals this, it's a 2 plus this. There we go. Now it's a 4. But again, now if I look at my formula bar, it no longer says 2 plus 2. It says C19 plus D19. So if I change that, so I change D19 to be 8,513, I've got a different answer now here, because now it's not looking at 2 plus 2, it's looking at C19 and D19. So that's, when we talk about cell references in the formula, it's this right here, where we're building a formula that references a different cell and the results of whatever's showing in that cell. Now, I told you at the outset, I was actually pointing to this insert function button. If I click this on a Mac, on the right side of the screen, I get this formula builder right here. On a PC, you're going to get a prompt. It's going to show up as a box that shows in front of your screen. And this is sort of your, it's called a wizard, to be able to build formulas without having to know all of the information. So it's sort of hack your way to building good formulas. Within this, I have those that I've recently used. And then I have all of them listed in alphanumeric order. So you've got to know a little bit about which formula you want to use, but you can start to just search for these. So I can say search for sum. I've got a lot of different sums. We're going to use a couple of them over the next couple of days. The easiest one is just sum, right? And if I click that and double click that, now you'll notice up here in my formula bar, I have equals sum, left paren, right paren. But here I have a wizard that's saying, oops, I need a couple of functions. I need some data in here to use this. We're going to do some more sums, but I want to, so I'm going to go back and get my 2 and 2. Turn on my function wizard. I'm going to use sum, double click. And already it's saying, okay, I think you're going to want it's trying to do the work for me. It's saying sum, all right. So the syntax of this formula is the sum of number 1, number 2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in this case, instead of me having to type in the right cell references or click on them, all I have to do is click in this box for number 1 and click this. And then click in this box and click this. And you'll see as I'm doing that, it's building that formula for me. It's saying, okay, you want the sum of E13 and F13. I could add more here if I wanted, if I had more information than I wanted to reference. I don't, I just have these two. So E13 and F13, and now all I have to do is click done. And I have the result of that. So this insert function button right here allows us to build really complex, really complicated formulas just by walking through the steps of what Excel is asking us to do. And we're going to cover some of the basic functions and the syntax of how to build them. And that's a good way to figure this out. Good way to learn how to use these. I can also, so I just referenced, in this case, I referenced one number and then another number. I can also reference a cell range. So I'm going to get rid of number 2. And instead of this being E13, I'm going to get rid of that and click in there, and now I'm just gonna click and drag from E13 to F13. Look at now that result set, or my reference now is E13 to F13. And click OK. So I have E13 to F13, not E13 comma F13. Same results. Same result as 2 plus 2. Same result as E13 plus F13. There's different ways to get to the same result. Whichever one is the best case for you and the easiest for you to use is the way to do that. So use this insert function button right here to hack your way to using these formulas well. An anatomy of a formula is just the function name, in this case sum, plus the arguments, which is the references and the bits and pieces that need to be pulled together in the right way for Excel to know how to run the algorithm. Also important for us to remember, right, and we'll get into this pretty quickly, is the order of operations. Go back to 3rd, 4th grade math, where you had to learn PEMBAS, right? We've seen, many of you are on Facebook and you see the solve this equation, and people often get them wrong because the order of operations, they get the order of operations wrong. Remember your order of operations because it's useful in Excel. Everything within the parentheses gets solved first, then exponents, then multiply and divide, then add and subtract. So let's do a quick example of that. So I'm going to say equals 2 plus 2, that equals 4, right? And then I'm going to say, let's see, times 8 plus 3. Here we go. So that equals 21. What did it do? It took 8 times 2 and added 3 and then added 2, right? Order of operations. I could also come in here and I could put these in parentheses. So I could say this. So now I'm saying 2 plus 2 times, or 8 plus 3 is 11 times 2 plus 2 gives me a different answer. So you can see order of operations matters. Everything in parentheses first, then exponents, then multiplication, then division, then addition and subtraction. If you get stuck on that, come back to this little shortcut or this tab right here to remember your order of operations. Because if your formula is not working, this might be a reason why. All right. So we're going to do some work in formulas, and we're going to do some work in formatting. We're going to pull all this together, the stuff that we're learning. First thing that we wanted, so we have in front of us here a very basic budget. Salaries, benefits, rent, supplies, travel, and we want to build some totals of these, and we want to make this work for us. First of all, I want to do a little bit of work on formatting. So I want to put some dates on here. First thing I want to do is I want to say that this is for June, July, and August of this year. So I could say June 2021. Notice when I typed that in, what happened? I typed in June 2021, and as soon as I clicked enter, it reverted to something else. It's June-21. And if I come up here, it no longer says June 2021, it says 6/1/2021. Excel will recognize dates and it will format dates accordingly. It will make this change for you, and it will change this to be June of 2021. You can reformat or change formatting up here where it says date. So maybe I don't want it to say June. Maybe this is just text. Also, every date, everything in Excel is actually a numeric code. Every date is a numeric code. It's unique to that date. So as soon as I say change this to text, it's going to change it to the numeric code for 6/1/2021, which is not helpful. But I want to change it back to a date. Maybe change it to a short date. Now it looks different. I also have this option down here for more number formats, which gives me all these different date codes. So you'll see I have all my different categories: numbers, currency, dates, times, percentages, fractions, scientific, text, special, custom, all these different formatting options. I'm going to go to date, and then within that, you'll see that I have all these different ways to show a single date. So I could show it as Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. I could show it as 6/1, I could show it as 6/1/21. In this case, I want to show it as month, day, month, year, June 2021, June 21. So I'm going to click that option. Here's my sample up here and click OK. So I've got June 21. And this is going to be July and August. So I could just type in July 21 or August 21, but I could also use some of the preloaded functionality in Excel by going into June, going to the very bottom right. Notice how my cursor went from a white cross to a black cross. And if I click, hold, and drag, I got June 2021. So it copied those cells, but I don't want June 3 times. I want June, July, and August. I have this autofill option though, and I can click this and I can say, I don't want you to fill the series, which means just copy the cells. I want you to fill months. So every time I move a cell, I want you to move a month. There you go. Now it's June, July, and August. Or I could say every time I move a cell, move a year. So now I have June 2021, June 2022, June 2023, or by days if I wanted. In this case, I do want months. I want June, July, and August. Now I have those there. You could do this for, I could run this out. I'm going to do this and then undo it. Let's run this out. A lot of rows. Boom. Now I have all the way through May of 2026, going month by month. And I could say, let's fill that by years. Now I'm all the way to, got a mess, but I've got August of 2040. So I'm going to undo that. Use my Control Z and go back. And I want just June, July, and August. So this is a good way, instead of having to type all those in, get that little black X, that black cross right there, click and hold, drag it across, fill that series. Also, these are not just numbers, this is currency. We're talking about a budget, so I want some dollar signs on this. So if I highlight them all, drag, click, highlight, go from the top left to the bottom right, and click this little dollar sign, now I get dollars with decimal places. I want the decimal places to go away because I don't have anything beyond 0. So this right here is to decrease my decimal, and those are gone. There we go. Now this is starting to look a little bit better. And I want to start to do some formulas here. So we're going to use sum. We're going to use the sum formula we used before. So I want to add up my rows, and then I want to add up my columns, and then add up my total of my total. So for my first total, I'm going to do equals. Oh, actually, I'm going to bring up my insert function button. There it is. I'm going to get rid of that so it comes back. Insert function, sum, and you'll see that it's Excel saying, okay, I think I know what you want to do. Is this right? In this case, it is. B, you can see I've got B3 through D3, and also they're highlighted in blue, so I can see it at a glance. So I can see B3 through D3. All I have to do is click done. There we go. I've got 6,000 right there. Now I could come to the next row beneath it and do the exact same thing. Equals sum B4 through D4. But I want to use the exact same functionality I use for my dates. I want to go to my bottom right, get that black X, and I want to click and drag down. Now look at my cell, watch up here in my formula bar as I move down. I'm getting B4, D4, B5, D5, D6, D6, B7, D7. So it's, as my formula moves down, the cell reference moves down with it in the exact same relation as that first one was done. So as I move down, it's going to look to back, 3 columns, whatever it is, and capture that data in the exact same row, but it's going to keep that consistent, keep that steady all the way through. This is called a relative reference. The reference here is relative in relation on the grid to where the original formula was built. We're going to talk about absolute references in a second, but remember, this is a relative reference. Now I want to do that same thing down here. I want to do equals, do this the right way. Insert function, sum, and again, it's saying, okay, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to build a table. So I know you want to use B3 through B7. Perfect. That's what I wanted. Okay. Why doesn't that work? Shouldn't show that. Equals sum. Oh, I've got something turned off here. So, oh, that's why. I had earlier, I turned this column to just show text. So it's not going to actually do the formula. It's just going to show the text that I'm typing into the formula, which is not fun. Come on, it should work. Sometimes you get some weird demons in the wires here. Let's try this one. All right, I'm going to create a new row because I've got something going on here. Sorry about that. You get to see how the screen. There we go. So the exact same thing. Sometimes I guess in how I was formatting this earlier, I think I messed something up in my homework doing this. This later. Get rid of that column. That was no good. All right, so now I have my sum for my totals at the bottom. I want to highlight. I'm going to bold these so I can see my totals a little bit easier. I want to bold this so I can see my totals there. Underline this maybe. I want to put a double underline on it so I can see it even more clearly. And then I want to extend this formula out even into my totals so I can see my total of what I spent. I see Melissa said that hers is doing that too when she used a wizard. It may have something to do with it. I don't know. Maybe there's something with that cell that got messed up at some point in time. My apologies. So now we've used our sum formula to create a table that shows month to month and then totals for line items. And for the months, we've got some information. Now we've got a budget. We've got a budget doc that we can give to our boss or give to our team or whatever it might be. Now I want to see, what percentage of salaries equals my total down here at the bottom. And what percentage of rent is part of my total expense. So I want to create a percentage. So we know percentage is, this divided by the total. So I don't have to use a formula for this. I can just say equals this divided by is the slash. And I'm going to go down here at the bottom. So, and I get 56%. Actually, what I should get is 0.56. And then when I come up here and click this little percentage button, I'm going to get that to change to 56%. There we go. So I know that salaries equals 56% of all the expenses that I have within this organization. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did before, where I'm going to get my little black X and I'm going to scroll down and something happened. So I have E3, let's look at our references. E3 and E8, cool, that's right. Now, what about this one? E4 and E9. Remember, I have a relative reference here, right? So where the formula is gonna move in relation to how that original formula was built. So as I move down, it's gonna move the denominator down one row as well, right? So I need to fix that. I need to create an absolute reference. It's called an absolute reference, meaning it's not going to move as my percent moves, as my formula moves. So I'm gonna get rid of this for a second. I'm gonna go back to where I had a clean formula. And if I come up here into this formula and I put a $ before the E and a $sign before the 8, I have now made that an absolute reference. Now, as I move down, look at my formula reference here. So now I've got E4 divided by E8, E5 divided by E8, E6 divided by E8, E7 divided by E8, and E8 divided by E8. So this has become an absolute reference, meaning as I move this formula, and I could come here and I could just go copy and paste, and it's going to move, but it's not just going to move one row and one column, it's going to move that entire thing down, but still look one column over and 5 columns down, or whatever this reference is. It's going to try to, but in this case, it's going to go to E8 because I have an absolute reference. So I've changed this from a relative reference. E3 is a relative reference. It moves as the formula moves. E8 is an absolute reference. It stays regardless of where I move the formula. And you can see this is exactly where it's helpful. where I'm referencing my numerators changing and my denominators staying the same. So I'm getting these percentages right here. Absolute and relative references. If I put the $sign, go back to this. If I put the $sign just in front of the E, that says keep E the same, keep the column the same. But as you move the formula, move the row. The row can move if it needs to. Similarly, if I put the $sign before the 8, but not the E, I'm saying as I move this formula, move the column, but keep the row the same. So to get an absolute fixed reference, you need the $sign before the column and the row reference, before the E and before the 8, to get a true absolute don't move at all reference. Move that down. Questions about that? If there are, please feel free to put those in the chat or grab the mic. Those become, especially as you do more work in Excel, as you're using formulas on formulas and using it for big, large data sets, relative and absolute becomes pretty important. And if things get wonky and don't look right, it's probably because you have a relative reference or an absolute reference where it shouldn't be. Okay, we're going to teach a couple other formulas besides some tonight. And then we're going to spend some time on Wednesday going over more formulas. But another easy one that it's pretty easy to use is average, which is exactly what you think it is. It's the average. It's the geometric average, I should say. So I'm going to go build my formula builder. I'm going to type in average, or sorry, arithmetic average or mean. And double click on that. And it's saying, okay, what numbers do you want to average? So I could do average this one, average this one, average this one, or it's easiest is just to say average B3 to D3. And that equals 2000. Also, if as you get better with formulas and you know the arguments, you can just say equals average, left parenthesis, drag and hold, right parenthesis, done. And from here, I'm going to right click or get that little black X, drag it down, and I've got my averages. So my monthly averages. So I know I spend on average, $1,000 a month on rent. Most of these are pretty much the same from month to month, but you can see an average moving across. Pretty easy one. All right. A formula that I use a lot, that a lot of people use a lot, that has a lot of functionality once you learn how to use it. It's basic to begin with, but you can make them very complicated, is an if formula, which is a formula you can use in Excel. It says, if an argument is true, return this. If it's false, return something else. So in this case, I want to be able to show my boss, as I'm giving him the budget report, which of these line items are on budget. Which of all of these right here, from salaries, I'm actually going to freeze some panes here so that we can see this. So I scroll over. Which of these arguments or these categories are on budget from what we had planned on when we built this budget? We have the budgeted amount right here, $6,000. Here's our totals right here. They're kind of the same, but there's some variance here. So I want to know which of these are on budget and which aren't. Now I'm going to use an if formula to do that. So let's use our formula builder, and let's do this the right way. Insert function, search for if. So there's quite a few ifs. We're just going to use the basic old if, double click. And now you'll see there's a description of this down here. This says checks whether a condition is met and returns one value, returns something if that condition is true, and returns another value, something else if it's false. And here's the syntax behind it. So you do if, left paren, the test, the value if it's true, and the value if it's false. Okay, so what's our logical test? I want to know if my test is this equals this. if 6,000 equals 6,000, if my total equals what I budgeted, if that's true, I want to say on budget, exclamation point. If it's false, I want you to say not on budget, exclamation point. So I've said we're going to use an if formula. If this equals this, say it's on budget. If this does not equal this, say it's not on budget. And click done. This one's on budget, right? 6,000 equals 6,000. Now, as I drag this down, I can use a relative reference because there's nothing in here that needs to stay absolute. I can start to see which of these are not on budget. And I can look and see, oh yeah, you're right. Benefits, we spent $100 more than we budgeted. This one we spent $200 more than we budgeted. That's interesting. So it's starting to tell you something. So you can use this if formula. Now, again, I said if formulas can get pretty complicated. And we're going to do one right now that starts to get at that, just to give you a taste of how cool these can be and how complicated they can be. So we're going to use another if formula. We're going to use our insert function. We're going to go equals if. And we're going to, because right now what this, let me back up. What this tells me is whether this line is on budget or not on budget. What it doesn't tell me is if it's over budget or under budget. It just says you're not on. We could be under budget, which is good, right? We haven't spent as much money as we thought we were going to spend. That's actually better than being on budget. So I need more information than what I'm getting from right here, meaning I need an if statement that allows me to do more than one argument. I need a multiple argument if statement. We're going to show what that looks like. So let me just double check. What we want to do is we want to start on, so I want to be able to display whether it's over budget, on target, or under budget, just by running an if statement. And I'm going to start on one side and sort of work my way over. So I'm going to say if this is greater than this. I'm sorry, I'm using less than. You can use greater than, but just for my own mind, I'm using less than. So use our carrots, use our alligator eats the bigger one, right? If what I spent is less than what I budgeted, what does that mean? That means that I am under budget. So that value of true is this right here. So if 6,000 is less than this 6,000, say I'm under budget. I've spent less than I wanted to. If it's false, and this is where this starts to get complicated. If it's false, instead of returning one value, I want you to do the if again. I want you to run another if analysis. So now we're going to come here and we're going to do another if statement. And come up here and I'm just going to run it from here. If true equals that. Now, if it's false, do the if again. Here's where you can see order of operations, right? It's going to do everything inside the parentheses and do another parentheses. In this case, my logical test is if this equals this, what's that value of true? That means I'm on target, I'm on budget. But what if that's false? Sorry, now so now I've taken care of if it's under budget, I've got my less than, my under budget, I've got my equal to. What I don't have is my greater than, but I don't need another if statement because I still have my value if false. So if that's not true, if it's not less than, and if it's not equal then, it has to be greater than, meaning my value if false can be this right here over budget. And I'm probably going to, if I need to put another parentheses at the end of this. Actually, I'm just going to click done for a second. And it's going to say, we didn't find enough. I often get this correction where it says, you didn't put enough parentheses in there. Can we add one? Sure, go ahead. Perfect. So now I have a multiple argument if statement. You can have as many arguments as you need to get all of the arguments out there that are possible. The important point is to start on one end of the spectrum. So in this case, start with less than and move to greater than. Or if you want to use, if it's less than 100, from 0 to 100, return this. If it's 100 to 1,000, return this. If it's 1,000 or more, return this. Start on one end, don't start in the middle. Start on an end and work to the other end with all your arguments. Now I'm just going to drag this down, and I've got a problem, right? What's my problem, do you think? I have, let's go back up here to my formula. I have relative references for these right here. So I'm not capturing those as I move the formula down. So I'm gonna go back up into this, and I'm going to put a, I need to put a absolute reference around my values of true. So this one, and this one. I've dragged that down. Cool. Now I can see that this one, not only is it not on budget, it's actually over budget. This one's not on budget, but it's under, so that's good. I have a multiple argument if statement based off of this argument right here, which is just comparing this column, my actuals, to my budget right here. If statements are powerful, as you can probably imagine, once you start building in multiple arguments to get at exactly what you need and what you want to display. All right, let me check my agenda. Cool. We got through order operations. We got through sum, average, if. We've made it through the agenda for tonight, and right on time. I have some extra time. If you have questions about that, if you want me to redo that, especially that if statement, those can get kind of complicated. And you can see, if you look at this, you go, well, that's just gibberish, and it's gibberish to me too. What helps is to use this wizard here to say, okay, if this is true, what's my test? What is it if it's true? What is it if it's false? And just kind of walk through it step by step. You don't have to know how to do all the commas and parentheses, etc., to get this done. Just use the wizard, and then as you get better, you can use your commas and parentheses. Questions? Does the dollar sign in a formula always equal an absolute? It does if it's around a cell reference. If it's around this kind of a reference right here. It doesn't if, like if I were to say, let me go back to this one right here. So if I have those quotes up there, right? And it's going to display whatever's inside those quotes. So I could say, $4 signs right here, and it's going to display those. So if you've got a dollar sign inside of a quote that is that's not related to a cell, then no, it doesn't mean an absolute reference. But if it's before a column reference or before a row reference, yes, it absolutely does. Yep, absolutely. You can also, as you're building this out, maybe we'll do this a little bit next time. You can reference data in different sheets. So let's say, I wanted to do a sum equals sum, and it's asking for the number. That number does not have to be here on this sheet right here. I can go to, let's go back to my master list, and let's say I want to see the sum of these cells right here. And you'll notice that my reference is naming the sheet with a little exclamation point at the end of it. It's saying it's referencing master list example Y10 to Y26. Right, parenthesis, there's my answer right there. And change that to currency if I want to. So it doesn't have to be right here in the cell, as long as you've got that formula started, which is the equals, right? Anything you do after that, it's going to reference, it's going to throw that up into that formula bar and allow you to do that. What's from finishing a Zoom presentation on time? That was pretty good. And dumb luck, for sure. Any other questions? Okay, so your homework before Wednesday, if you would like to, is to get into this exercise file, which you got, and make it match what I just did. Do all these formulas for, you know, the first, for this tab especially, but do some of the formatting on the master list example and make that work. Make sure you can do that. Also, please think about your world, your life, what you use Zoom for, what you want to use Zoom for, and put those questions and use cases in an email to Dara before Wednesday. And Dara, if it's possible to get those to me, you know, by end of day Wednesday, by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that'll give me a little bit of time to do some homework. And I will try to get all those answered. Also, if you start to work in this exercise file and you can't make something work and you want to review something on Wednesday, we're going to cover that as well. So Wednesday's about to review your use cases, and then we're going to keep plowing forward. We've got some more formulas we're going to work on, and then get into charts, graphs, and pivot tables. So that's your homework. My email also, let's switch my share. I know we're at the end of our time, but I want to switch my share for a second. Dara can send out my email, but it's also up here. Jesperson with all E's at mtnonprofit.org. You can email me as well if you have an individual question, either before Wednesday or even afterwards. I'm happy to take those and walk through whatever you need. Thanks for giving your time on a Monday. Thanks for going over with me by 5 minutes. And if there are no other questions, I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And
Ellen.
thank you to everybody that was on. If you saw in the chat, we did record this session and we'll record the next session as well. I will send out the link to our website once those have been posted. So if you weren't able to hear it all or you want to send it on to anybody, feel free. Again, thank you all for being on, and we hope to see you on Wednesday.
Have a good night, guys.